Video game movies are back in the news with Warcraft being released and Ratchet and Clank being out. Lots of video game adaptations are being brought to the theater. And like I said in my review for Warcraft, my entire thing is that video game movies based on video games, have been very, very inconsistent as far as quality goes. In fact, the vast majority of them are not very good. But I'm wondering, is there a future for video game movies? Well, joining me to talk about it, please welcome Reel to Reel Productions. Welcome back, bro.
Hey, Geekdom. Hey, everybody. It's really good to be here. Thanks for having me back on.
Oh, anytime, bro. At Geekdom Movie Talk, where we talk about movies with Geekdom. So that's what we're doing here. Anyways.
Branding up the ass.
I like it. I like it. GTM for sure. Definitely spread this video out, folks, to your friends. So, video game movies. Now, growing up in the 80s and 90s, there were a few of these. Of course, there's Mario Brothers, which was not very good, even though it's found some camp value as the years have gone by. Really, all of these have a campy quality to them. Street Fighter, of course. Double Dragon was atrocious. And then we have, like, in the late 90s, we had, like, the Resident Evil movies, which are extremely polarizing. Like, some people totally dig them. Some people like the first one and hate the sequels. Some people don't like any of them. And then, there's also the Silent Hill movies, Alone in the Dark. There's just so many, live action adaptations of video game movies. But now I feel like the world is starting to kind of adapt to that. Now, one thing I wanted to bring up to you, Real Bro, is one thing that I've noticed that's happened in the video game world versus the 90s is that video games themselves have become much more cinematic. Now, if you go back to the mid-90s, Sega tried this with the Sega CD system. A lot of the games essentially were these cinematic kind of movie games where you play through the movie or play through the series, but the games weren't very good. I feel like a lot of it was point-and-click shit or hit the button at the right time shit. Games like Tomcat Alley and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on Sega CD. I used to play these games, bro. I'm taking it back. Dracula Unleashed. I'm very knowledgeable about this era. But then when we hit like the PS1 era and then PS2, we saw games like Final Fantasy VII, Parasite Eve, even Resident Evil 1, deeply rooted, of course, in the George Romero zombie lore. And then we've got, as the systems and as technology has improved, we've had video games become more cinematic. So my first question to you is this. If video games are becoming more cinematic, more movie-like, what's the point of making them into movies? You can't go to the movie theater and play the movie.
Well, I feel like that's one of the reasons that they're not necessarily translating very well. Cinematic video games, or even video games in general, just have their own little niche, unique kind of market or audience. People like this kind of going into a story and being able to play the protagonist and kind of go for it. Movie watching and movie making, storytelling in general, is just so much more passive of an experience. So it's one thing to sit there, and you did mention Resident Evil. It's actually a really unique argument or kind of explanation to what I'm talking about. Is in the video games, whether you like them or hate them, or like the way they've kind of evolved throughout, because as you said, the whole George Romero influence from the beginning of the games versus Resident Evil 6 now, where it's just kind of like run and gun the entire time. Fingers crossed for a Resident Evil 7, by the way. It sounds promising, but we'll never know.
Biohazard
We won't know it.
7 Resident Evil 7 Biohazard.
Exactly. But the thing about that is, in the movies you have this character named Alice, and I think it was really smart of them to kind of give us a protagonist or a story completely set basically before the events of the first game. So it kind of felt tangible with this character that kind of could exist in this world to some degree. And obviously it just branched off into its own thing.
Especially with the sequel, which brought in Nemesis and Jill Valentine, who were in the games. I mean, these characters did exist.
Yes, and it's true. And one of the arguments a lot of people who like the fans, the films, myself included, although I realize they're just camp value and they're just guilty pleasures for me, and I'm sure a lot of people who do enjoy the films, they're guilty pleasures. We all know that they're not the greatest of films. But a lot of people who like the film say it's time for the games to introduce the character, and I'm completely against that. I think one of the things that makes those films work is that the character that we're following is not a character we control in the games. So it's not a story that we're bound to, and it's new, it's different, and it's original. I think when they take characters that are rooted in the games that we have played through and gotten to know based off our interactions and the way we control them, and put them in a movie form, it's really hard to translate the audience and the goodwill towards that.
Yeah, and there are some games that are, and I'm talking about more recent games, that are so cinematic that I could totally see them essentially being movie-like. You know, some of the more recent Metal Gear Solids. And again, Metal Gear Solid, of course, is also influenced by not only other spy movies, but, of course, John Carpenter. And you know, his Escape from New York, Escape from LA, Snake Plissken. There's lots of influences when they make these games. Grand Theft Auto, another game series that's heavily influenced by films, whether it be The Godfather or Hood movies or Scarface. And then we've got Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed, there is a deal that was made where Ubisoft has done I think they have a contract with 20th Century Fox to do a Assassin's Creed film. And personally, I think that's a great idea, because I like the Assassin's Creed series so much that I think making it a film would be great. I just feel like, I don't know, like I feel like it's a great idea, but the games are so damn cinematic that's also a pointless idea. I don't know if that makes any sense. I think that there could be stories told within that universe like you're talking about, but as far as adapting the story, that's a little tougher.
I mean, it's really hard to say, really, because it's sounding like, as they keep putting out information about Assassin's Creed, although the unique, the animus is definitely different within that of the movie and the game and everything, there is talk to say that it's actually set within the game's universe.
Now, that's different. I just want to comment on that. I think depending on what you do with these, this is my opinion, of course, and if you agree or disagree, let me know in the comment section, of course. I think that depends on the universe they're building in the lore. For example, if you're going to do a movie based on, let's say, Devil May Cry, okay? Devil May Cry has created an entire lore, an entire world, so you could take bits and pieces from every game and make it into a movie. But if you're going to do something just outwardly ridiculous like Centipede or Tetris and make it into a movie, you're going to have to create a world that's based on literally nothing except for pixels. And to me, that's kind of stupid. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's kind of dumb.
Well, to be fair, and I think if you want to talk about Warcraft, I think this is one of the problems Warcraft had. But to be fair, those movies do have somewhat of a story. It's just in the text that nobody's ever read. The instruction manual text has story for those things, and there's
especially back in the Nintendo era, yes.
Yeah, or even arcade games or something, like Asteroids or something. I mean, all these movies, everyone should know all these movies that we're talking about have been somewhat confirmed to be in development or development hell to some degree over the last couple of years.
Decades of, dozens of movies that have been in development, like
Yes.
Halo the movie. I swear I've heard the Halo movie talked about for maybe like almost 10 years. Peter Jackson was going to do it, I remember. I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah, and to be fair, like there are some things, and just to kind of give it a little bit more context, if you want to talk about movies that are just basically almost too cinematic for their own good to be actually adapted one way or the other, I think one of the ones that's actually in kind of a development hell right now over the last couple of years was the writer of NYPD Blue and Deadwood, David Milch, I think his name was. Mm-hmm. He was hired to write a Heavy Rain movie back in 2013, and the thing was about that is that game really worthy of a sequel? I mean, that game is so cinematic. And the idea that you can make choices and kind of make certain events different as you kind of play. I mean, how does a movie translate that? And how does a movie take those opinions and the way that you actually interact with the game to that degree when it's so cinematic? How does it actually be a genuine experience?
Well, I'll give you another one, bro. Roller Coaster Tycoon was rumored to be a movie in 2010, and then I heard that they were going to do a Sims movie. How do you take a movie, how do you make a film based on a story where you essentially, or a game, excuse me, where you essentially play God. These aren't characters. You're playing yourself. Like, I can understand a Sly Cooper animated movie, a Sonic the Hedgehog. I can understand these things. Even Metal Gear Solid, even though it's kind of pointless because the games cover that. But for, like, okay, Tetris, Asteroids, these aren't movies, man. They're just dumb little, I mean, not dumb as in they're bad, but they're just simple little games, you know, where there's no story, there's no characters, you know. And when I go see a movie, I want to see great characters. That's the whole point, is I want to see the characters fleshed out. I thought that Warcraft did a great job of fleshing out some of the characters and also shortchanging other ones. But I think that they did a decent job of, you know, when they did flesh them out, they did a good job of fleshing those characters out. I thought that it actually brought the game to life in many instances. But again, they were limited by a 2-hour movie. You know, you can't tell the whole story. Video games are super long now. Video games now are like 100 hours. Movies are 2, maybe 3, you know?
And like we already said, the way you can control your character and put them. But, you know, to be fair, if we want to talk about Warcraft, I think one thing Warcraft did really well, especially with the orcs. The orcs, everything with the orcs on screen was awesome. The humans, not so much.
The orcs were captured great.
Yeah, the humans, not so much. I feel like what Warcraft really did, and kind of what it was meant to do. I mean, the way Warcraft was told was it was the beginning of, it was basically the story or setup for the very first game. And
which it's somewhat of a contradiction, but not too much, I will say.
Yeah, and the thing is that's okay. That's okay if you look at it that way. But the one thing Warcraft did, and I really kind of hope, even like, you could hate it, you can love it, but let's be honest, because China, it opened up so big in China, hopefully we'll get a second and third one that's already in development or kind of planned, because what it did was it showed that you can create a really beautiful, really high budget video game movie, and just kind of, whether it succeeded or not, it set the groundwork for something really special going forward, I hope. I mean, like we said, the orcs and everything were really handled very well. And that's the thing, you know, you take something like Warcraft, and they're not even doing World of Warcraft, which is a whole nother beast, but you're taking the point and click strategy based Warcraft games that do have a story.
But it is all part of the same universe.
Yes,
so World of Warcraft people will find familiarity in that film.
Yes, I'm not saying that. I feel like you're taking the point and click versions of the games that had, like, and Blizzard games notoriously have a very good story. I feel like they have no blockage of actually having an amazing story. There's a lot to pull from. It's just, you know, what is there to focus on? I mean, you even in those games you have heroes and you have all this stuff, but I mean, just the world of the game, like, what do you focus on if not just the heroes? But you also have to focus on you have to kind of bring the spirit of the game alive. But when you're doing point and click things, and one thing they didn't do very well was bringing that spirit in. I was reading an article and someone was saying the worst thing about Warcraft is nobody was mining for minerals the entire movie. And it's,
it's funny, but yeah, come on now.
You can't, but that's the thing. Like, there are certain with video games, video games, when you're playing them versus when you're actually watching a movie, there's this passive and interactive portion where you go, there's just something missing. It's not Warcraft. It might be the story of Warcraft, but it's not the experience of Warcraft. And I think that's what really irritates a lot of people, especially fans who go into stuff like Resident Evil or Street Fighter or the Tekken movies that they've made or anything like, and go, it's that, but it's not that. I mean, these are the characters that I came to love. These are the characters, but it doesn't feel like it because I'm not interacting with them. I'm not actually using them.
You're not playing as them, which I think is the big thing, is that you're going to go see this movie, you know the characters, but you don't really play as them. So I think it would have to be, it's just tough, because the other thing too is there is a stigma. Okay, like, for example, we get war movies all the time. If they make a Call of Duty movie or a Battlefield movie or something like that, it's just going to get that, oh, it's based on a video game stigma. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I think that's another problem. Like, it's kind of a tricky situation.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like, you know, just to kind of push it a little bit further, you know, you were talking about all these movies that came out in the 90s and everything. And obviously this year, and going forward, I think we're going to see a huge difference in the way that video game movies, are actually being developed and released. Obviously, we already talked a little bit about Ubisoft kind of coming in with Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, The Division, and Splinter Cell.
Yes.
And they're really pushing this stuff there.
And just for the record, Tom Clancy has had movie adaptations before he even had video game adaptations. So the whole Tom Clancy lore has already been covered in the past.
Mm-hmm. And we also have, you mentioned Halo. Obviously, Halo has. I'm sure if they ever do a full blown Halo movie, you're gonna have people probably, because he's always been rumored to be a part of it. Like Steven Spielberg's name's probably gonna be on it somewhere, whether he had much to do with it or not. Obviously, J.J. Abrams recently bought the rights for Portal and Half-Life. I mean, these are amazing games with amazing stories, with amazing filmmakers kind of being attached to them. So are we about to see... So the idea is, like, we've had 3 this year. We've had Warcraft, Angry Birds, and Ratchet and Clank.
I forgot all about Angry Birds. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it's not even the last. Like, we have multiple coming out this year and next year, and into the foreseeable future, we have multiple of these things coming out. Ubisoft really wants to push the limits of what's possible with video game movies. And, are we in the moment, or were we in the moment maybe like 10 years ago or in the 90s or something, where we were basically living and watching these old superhero movies like the outliers, like the Batman movies and the Superman movies ever coming in. But then you had movies like The Phantom and...
oh, God, The Phantom.
The Phantom, and then all these other like weird, wacky kind of, or Steel or something wacky.
Oh, you named
movies.
The 2 best examples. You named the 2 best examples right there, bro.
Yeah, like those type of movies coming out, and it's like, man, like superhero movies will never work. And we have all these kind of, they're never going to work because of this, or people just don't understand what superhero movies are. But are we literally sitting at the moment in time in which these movies are about to explode, and someone is going to come in and go, this is the heart and soul of the story of this particular game franchise, and this is how you adapt it into a movie that's satisfying. And we're going to see huge explosions and huge directors go and direct these amazing stories that need to be told on screen. I mean, really, we don't know. It's one of the things that's going to be really interesting to see.
Do you think that there is a future for highly successful video game movies? Because you're right, Warcraft blew up in China, but what about domestically? Do you think that maybe the games are just too ingrained in what we have?
I don't think so. Like that's what I'm saying. I mean, even there's, Nintendo recently has been talking about getting back into movies. I mean, there's that failed Netflix Link or Zelda project that they were talking about.
They've been talking about that for years, a Zelda movie, that is.
No, they were going to do a Netflix series. Rumored, but that kind of fell through. And then they're going to talk about maybe we should do kind of a cinematic universe of Nintendo, which makes a whole lot of sense. But I do think it's not just China. We're at if you look at it the way I look at it, I feel like we're at this like the forefront of seeing cinematic, really successful, really anticipated video game movie adaptations the same way that we saw comic book movies. Now, I could be wrong. I mean, I could be completely wrong. I mean,
I think the difference is, I just want to say one thing, is because the comic books are literature. Video games, you're actually playing it. The characters are more alive. In fact, in some ways, video games or characters are more alive than even movies in some cases. Not with actors, but I mean like as far as the characters themselves, you can control them. You can do whatever you want with them. You know what I mean? So in some cases, that's the big difference. Is I'm sure people are saying, well, I'm such a fan of this franchise, I don't want to see them butcher it. There's that stigma. Like, people who are movie fans, right? They're going to stay away from those movies because they know it's based on the game. It's not really a directorial, vision, even though Duncan Jones is a good choice for Warcraft. And then you've got, the video game fans who are like, well, I don't want to go see that movie because I've got the game. What could I learn from that movie, The only way it could work, I would think, is if they tell you something in the movie that somehow relates to the game, or the character is so popular that it could be done. Like Zelda, I think, would be a good movie, honestly.
Well, yeah, I mean, a character like Mario or something could potentially or theoretically work on paper because he's so ingrained into the public consciousness. And playing Mario isn't like I'm Mario. It's this is Mario, this is Link, this is Sonic, this is someone else. That's why it works. But someone like what's his name from I can't even remember his name, the main guy from Assassin's Creed or something. It's like, who cares about that guy? That guy's me, or this guy.
But yet those movies are or those games are so cinematic,
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think I'm a firm believer that you can kind of probably make a movie about anything. I mean, just look at how many people thought that the Lego movie would be stupid. And
yeah,
that movie was huge. It broke so many expectations. And I feel like when you look at that and you look at exactly how that's actually the one thing that they're looking for, is they're going to figure out a way to make these movies that don't upset the gamers. In fact, actually make the gamers excited to go. I mean, think of it in terms of the comic books. How much money, how much speculation and like people shit on Robert Downey Jr. being cast as he's too old or something. They have to deal with that stuff too. They have to deal with interpretations of what people are, who they look like, what they do, what type of stories they adapt, all this stuff. I mean, if anything, comic books have it harder because they just have so much. They're so ingrained in popular culture. They have so many stories that they could be doing when they could be looking over one thing or another. I mean, literature just has this. Literature or any type of art form, just when you're adapting it, they all have their own different challenges. And I think video games have that challenge too. And some level they've cracked it, and some level they really haven't. I mean, like you can sit there and talk about quality about Resident Evil all damn day. They've cracked it. Like in terms of the quality that they're shooting for and the money that they're shooting for to make, they've literally broken records. It's the highest grossing video game film adaptation series. It's the most successful ever out there. They cracked it. And I think one of the things they did was, like I said, they made Alice a character separate from the games and had the game characters kind of come and go and told their own story as they please. Is that the way you do it? Probably not. But we'll have to see. I think we're really at the forefront of this. The one thing I do want to say, though, because I think it's incredibly relevant to this, is the kind of the very slow evolution and ballpark successes of stuff like Transformers, because Transformers has been so ingrained in both the domestic culture and kind of the American viewpoint of all these worldwide audiences. Is Transformers comes out in 2007, is this Hasbro property and becomes really freaking huge. And so they think, okay, we can do almost anything.
But remember, that was also a cartoon series as well.
Yes, but
all that shit had 80s cartoons.
Yes. And the same thing with G.I. Joe. But this gives, and Ninja Turtles and all this stuff. But for whatever reason, it gives, all this success gives Universal the idea that they can make Hasbro board games into movies, and then we get Battleship.
Yeah, it doesn't work for everything.
It doesn't work for everything, but that doesn't mean
because
it
in Transformers and in G.I. Joe and in Turtles, we have characters. That's what it's all about, is the characters,
I disagree with that, though. And I disagree because I feel like it's not about characters. I feel like it's about story. And because they have characters, it works. Because when you have characters, you have dynamics that you can play off in order to make the perfect story for you, whether it's good or bad. The Lego movie didn't have characters other than taking popular culture characters for certain jokes, but they created their own characters to tell their own specific story. It worked. So the reason the reason Battleship didn't do well is because they decided to focus on special effects and everything that they could put in there. They threw so much money into it because they knew it was going to be, after a while, they threw so much money because they knew it was going to be a bomb. And the amount of money they lost on that, they lost $80 million on Battleship alone, even more having to break the contract that they signed with Hasbro.
Yeah, with Hasbro.
Yeah,
it was like a virus almost.
Yeah, and it hurt Universal. Of course, Universal finally recovered. But the thing is I definitely don't think that's where video games are headed. I think video games are legitimately, we're in this time period where video games, because of Warcraft, because of Angry Birds, because of all these movies that are coming out that kind of whether they're good or not, they're kind of starting to peel back and figure out a cinematic way to kind of reach the spirit of what that game is. That I think we're on the forefront of these video game movies becoming the next big thing. And obviously this has been kind of on people's mind for like the last 10 years now.
Well, yeah, and now it's coming. Now, before we get out of here, last question. It's a simple one. What video game do you want? Pick one that you want to see adapted into a movie.
I know it right off the bat. It is Soul Reaver for the
Legacy of Kain?
Legacy of fucking Kain, dude.
That wouldn't be a bad movie. I could dig that.
That would be amazing.
I got one for you, but you go first. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, like that's amazing. There's to anyone who hasn't played it, if you're still listening, like just go look it up. You can watch almost all 5 games on YouTube. You don't even have to play them. The story is amazing. If you want to know, like with all this trunk stuff going on, if you want to know all the stuff that like time travel done right and time travel done really epically, Legacy of Kain is definitely the thing to look at.
All right. Well, mine is Ninja Gaiden. I want a Ninja Gaiden movie. Yeah, I love the story of Ryu. I love the story of the Hayabusa family. I want that to be a movie, even if it's just an anime movie. Mm-hmm. I still want that. That's my pick.
Oh, I think that's perfect. If I can give one more though, and I can actually give a director for this.
We're breaking the rules, but go ahead.
I know, but I can actually give a director for this. I want James Cameron, before he gets too old and decrepit, I want James Cameron to direct a StarCraft movie.
He could do it because fucking Avatar looks like StarCraft.
Yeah.
I mean, he's close enough. Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I think.
Or how about this one? Quentin Tarantino directs Red Dead Revolver.
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
That would be epic, bro. Just the dialogue itself would be epic.
Martin Scorsese directs GTA Vice City.
We've already seen that, bro. It's called Scarface.
It is Scarface.
We've already seen that movie. Yeah.
But it's not Martin Scorsese doing it.
No, it's not. You're right. Martin Scorsese directs Kane and Lynch. There you
go. Oh, yeah.
Max Payne. Well, we've already seen that movie. Yeah, never mind. Not very good. All right, well, everybody check out Reel to Reel and let us know in the comment section down below what if you think that video game movies have a future, and what video games do you want to see have an adaptation? I'm looking for some wacky responses. I want somebody to whip out like Little Nemo the Dream Master, which actually that'd be awesome, bro, or Kabuki Quantum Fighter.
I like Little Nemo. That's a better idea.
That's not a bad idea, bro. Disney, get on it. Check out Reel to Reel. Links down below. Tons of content on his channel. Theories, educated fan fiction stuff. I guess you can call it that.
Yes, I think that's the most accurate depiction.
There you go. Educated fan fiction stuff. And I'll talk to y'all later.